Welcome everyone to another edition of Draw Me Anything. I'm Jason, and with me today is someone I've wanted to speak with for a long time. I actually did a guest post on his Substack couple of years ago, I think, about my process of submitting New Yorker cartoons, how it's changed from then and now, and he has an excellent Substack. He actually has more than one Substack, which, as I've come to realize, is a ridiculous amount of work. But I'd like to make very welcome the incredibly talented Adam Ming. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you for that intro, Jason. I don't know if that's deserved, but I appreciate
It
it.
is definitely deserved. You're being typically modest. How are you? Yeah, where do we find you? You're not in the United
I'm in
States.
KL, Malaysia, and it's 11 at night. This meeting was rescheduled. It was supposed to be at 3 a.m., so this is
Yes.
better. I was
Yeah,
happy to do 3 a.m. as well.
when I
I
re-
figure it's like
yeah.
flying over there to visit you without the flight.
Yeah, there you go. It's like a red eye. Exactly. My family live in Perth in Western Australia. So when I call them, it's
Okay.
12 hours difference. And so I figured, yeah, this is actually much more accommodating. But I still appreciate you jumping on so late at night for this. What I wanted to do with you today is, as well as just drawing together, because you're a ridiculously talented artist, I wanted to share your work and story with people, with my readers, and also just kind of get a sense of your journey as an artist, because you are
Sure.
prolific. I mean, the books you've created. I discovered you when I was illustrating my first book, and I had no idea what I was doing, and it was very helpful just reading your Substack and seeing your advice, your resources, your sort of creative process, and you have a very I'm jealous as you have a very deliberate and very clear sense of style. Your style is so recognizable, and even though you're able to be malleable and change things for different books and things, it's still just this unmistakable style, and I love it. It's just beautiful color theory, everything. How did you even get into this? How long have you been an artist for?
That's a great question. I was about three, drawing on the walls,
Hmm.
scribbling on the floor, and my mom said, "Wow, that looks like a tree." And I said, "Yeah, mom, exactly. That's what I was intending." It surely
It's
was
always a good
not. But then
start.
I liked the encouragement, so I kept going. And I kind of knew forever, but I went to art school.
Hmm.
And when I came out from art school, I had no idea what to do with that. And so
Right.
I did all kinds of other jobs. I worked in sales, selling luxury cars and all manner of odd things, tried painting. And yeah, it wasn't until around COVID, I was going to turn 40. And
Hmm.
then I realized and I remembered, hey, I wanted to be an illustrator and I'm going to be 40. And if I don't do it now, I'm going to be 50. And then how is that going to feel? And that
Yeah.
was a scary realization. So I felt like in
Yeah.
this coming decade, I have like maybe the best shot. I have some experience and still some energy. I'm just gonna go for it. And that's what I started to do.
I'm glad you
And I
did.
wanted to be a cartoonist actually,
Really?
not a picture book illustrator. But then you see that that industry was like sunset, it was coming down, nobody buys
Yeah.
newspapers anymore. But I
Hmm.
just love that format. I love like all you have to do in a day is draw three squares and you've done that for some time. And yeah, I'd love
Yeah.
to hear about your thoughts on that industry because in the end I feel I found Substack to fulfill that for me. I
Hmm.
write a daily Substack, so
Right.
it's like there's a community and you're making something for them every single day, and
Yeah.
it feels like a comic strip to me. It
Yeah.
doesn't
It's a
look like
daily
it, but I
relationship with
mean,
your readers. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Do you have anything to say to that?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I did do a syndicated comic strip for 16 years, and it was a daily strip. It was 7 days a week, so six 3-panel dailies, and then on Sundays it was a big, 8 deck half page. It actually ran in the Star for a while. It was syndicated to 34 countries, and it would be translated into different languages, which was a difficult thing to like write, because then you have to make sure the humor is going to translate. Um,
Right.
But that I had never done anything like that when I was asked to take it over. It was a legacy strip. It had already been running for like 80 something years by the time I took it over. And that life, that daily deadline of a daily comic strip and that daily relationship you have with your readers, the way that you do now, it's really important. It's a huge responsibility, and it does weigh on you. You end up, I mean, there are ways to do it, and instead of just having to fill in 3 panels each day, which sounds like a lovely, I know, like it sounds like
Yeah.
such a great thing. You end up batching them together so that you're in the same headspace when you do them all,
Yeah.
and you write them in a batch, you pencil them in a batch, you ink them in a batch, you color them in a batch, and then you send them off,
Okay.
like 6 or 7 at a time each week. Um, but that relationship, that daily relationship, it's this parasocial. Like I remember reading Calvin and Hobbes growing up and thinking, like I was just obsessed with Bill Watterson and his mind and these characters, and it felt like a personal relationship almost,
Mm.
And
And he only did it for 10 years. You said you did it for 16 years. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah, it was a long most of my adult life I've been doing a comic strip. Um, I think the difference between doing a daily Substack and doing a daily strip is that with the strip you have to work 6 weeks ahead. So if you do a joke or a
Right.
reference or anything like that, you have to make sure that it's going to still be relevant and it's still going to be funny 6 weeks ahead. So you can't be very topical. And if you are, it has to be like Easter or Christmas. Like it has to be a vaguely thematic thing.
Right.
Whereas with Substack, I could post today about something that just happened this morning, and my readers will immediately be able to comment and communicate about it. And I was saying this to just earlier this week to Alex Dombrowski. I hate calling people subscribers. It makes me feel ugh. Readers is who I because they're readers, right? I mean,
Yeah.
do you feel the same way?
I think I like calling them readers or maybe community.
Yeah, community. Yeah, because it is a community. Yeah, have you found? So I wanted to. There's a couple of things I'm really curious about with you because I've been following your work for a while, and you came onto Substack pretty early. I mean, I think maybe we were around the same time, but I think you were ahead of me a bit, and you really seemed to know what you were doing, whether you did or not. It looked like you knew what you were doing, and I was always curious because um, growing up in Malaysia, I don't know if you had any influences locally or anything like that. I've only been to Malaysia a couple of times. Growing up in Australia, it was pretty close. So if I was vacationing anywhere, I'd go to Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore. It was easier than going to Sydney because Perth is just
Right.
like 3 hours away. Um, and I have a friend from Malaysia who I was asking him about like artistic influences, since in Southeast Asia there's a totally different, I guess, artistic ecosystem, I want to say, or like influence, like even like the comic strips in the Hindustan Times, in like, so India and Pakistan, and there's like comics about cricket and all these different like influences that people are like hyper famous there, like local famous, and then no one else
Right.
in the rest of the world knows anything about them. Did you have any of those like influences growing up?
Yeah, definitely. There is a local cartoonist that there's a famous story of him. His name is Lat. I don't know if you've heard of Lat.
How do you
So you
spell it?
have to check that out. Lat.
L-A-T.
And
Okay, right.
his famous comic book is called Kampong Boy, and it's the same kind of format as Calvin and
Oh,
Hobbes, and they have
yeah,
big
right.
pages and they do have like strips. And so
Yeah,
it's about life in the village. Kampong means village, so it means village
right.
boy. And so he captures most of Malaysians in that era grew up and then moving to the city, that whole like hero's journey of like growing up in a village with palm trees all around and moving to the city. So he captures that ecosystem, and it's kind of like autobiographical almost,
Yeah,
from small
wow.
town to bigger town, eventually to
Yeah,
KL. So I love this work and I love doing autobiographical comics. And one day I got to meet him. So I stood in front of
really.
him. I did, yeah. And I brought my autobiographical comic and showed it to him. And I said, "You really influenced me." And he looked through it and he said, "I don't see it."
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh,
And so
wow.
it wasn't a long conversation, and that was like they say don't meet your heroes, right?
They say never meet your
But yeah,
heroes, then they're right.
yeah.
That's insane. Wow. I mean, he must, how old is he now? I mean,
I don't know.
so
He
he's
might be in his 60s or 70s, possibly.
right. So he's been working
But
for a long
yeah,
time. I did just look up. I have seen that style and I do recognize the art, but I must admit, I never saw the strip. I never saw the art, the comics. But
he
yeah, I
used to
definitely recognize
have
the style.
he used to have a panel in the Malaysian Airlines magazine. Those days, Malaysian Airlines was a big
Yeah.
airline,
Well,
quite
it's still pretty
competitive, and so they
big.
had a magazine, and they
Yeah.
had a comic strip in it, and Lat used to draw it. And then for whatever reason, he stopped drawing it, and I got offered to try for the job. I just came out of college, so I tried. And they
Wow.
said no, someone else did it. So they gave it to someone else for 2 months. But then after 2 months, they said, "Can you do it?" And so I got to do that magazine for actually, I think, over a year until they killed the
That's
magazine.
fantastic. Wow.
Yes,
How
I
did you
don't have
find it
any of that.
coming up with material for a year?
It was cut. It was more of an illustration of a travel journal. So there'll be a travel log kind of
Right.
thing, and I just illustrate the text. So
Right,
that was
right.
my foray into illustration. And in
That's so
those
cool.
days, I thought, and this is a nice full circle of how I got in.
Yeah.
So those days, I thought, wow, this is easy. Just out of college, I got this magazine gig for a year, good money, easy. And then that was kind of the end of it. And then there was like
Ah.
10 or 20 years where I did not know what I was doing. I went to art school, but
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't know what I was doing after that.
That's so
And
interesting. Huh. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
but so
by the
after
way,
COVID,
I was
go
just
ahead.
going to say, Nishant, Jane just joined. When we were talking
Hey,
on
man.
his podcast, we were talking about his look. There was a local cartoonist in India that we both knew of, and again, it was one of those things where he was reading like he was reading that growing up, and we were both like, yeah, it's like again, he was so famous there, but no one else in the world knew who he was.
Right.
It was Prime Kumar was the cartoonist. Yeah, it's so interesting that influence and like how that like you the fact that you were able to get a gig like that right out of college is wild, by the way.
It is. I was, but I was mostly influenced internationally. I loved comics growing up, like Spawn, Spider-Man, things like that.
Hmm.
So I
Todd
feel my
McFarlane.
influence came more from it, definitely. And I love
Yeah.
his attitude. You talk about being deliberate. I love the
Yeah.
way like he literally changed the industry and the way he
Yes.
hardball everybody.
I had the
Yeah,
identical reaction. I used to spend all my pocket money on Mad Magazine and Spider-Man, and it was the Todd McFarlane era Spider-Man. And
yeah,
it was just so like, yeah, he just completely changed the tone. I have that cover, that very iconic Spider-Man cover of him in the web in that
yeah,
pose, and Todd
yeah.
signed it. I have it in my studio here.
Wow,
It's like one of my most prized possessions. It was a gift.
amazing.
And yeah, there's something about that style being so deliberate and so like like you recognize it a mile away, and yet it's
You
a
can see that in your art
yeah.
as well. There is that energy in the work that you do, I feel.
I think maybe now it's
Influence.
just starting to come out like 20 years in because I was doing a comic strip which was a legacy strip. I had to draw in someone else's style for a very long time.
Right.
I had to ape an existing kind of style, and so now I'm getting to draw like me. And it's like, and yeah, so you probably see more of me in the drawing now because I'm just doing the work that I want to do without any editors or art directors or anything over my shoulder. um
It's
yeah,
looking
but
great, man. Your Substack looks great. Your lettering looks great. Like
thank you. Thank you.
it's mature.
I'm grateful. Yeah, it's still a work in progress, but I appreciate that because and I've been always like watching you and Nishant and people who like you seem to have a very good sense of like cohesion and your brand and all these things just like it feels like you. Your Substack feels like your books. It feels like you have this you've done a lot of books. Can you just talk for a second about that because you went
Sure.
from thinking, oh, I want to be an illustrator, to being a
Yeah.
published author, illustrator in, I mean, some people work their entire
Couple of
lives and
years.
never get published. I mean, can you talk to that for a second?
Sure. So I was doing a lot of different jobs, and for the last 8-ish years before I became an illustrator, I was working in startups.
Right.
So I got to come to the States. I went to Stanford for a short time. There was like a
Wow.
crash course on business.
Yeah,
And
wow.
that really opened my mind. There's like systems for everything. You learn the way startups start and scale and get funded, and
Yeah.
you kind of learn the systems and you can actually apply them to what you do as an illustrator. So that really helped give you a bit of sense of like when you're creating a product to be deliberate about things and
Right.
instead of when I was in college, I wanted to make comics, but they were always so lofty. It had to be like so perfect. It had to be so epic, and like you want to put everything in there. But you learn
Yeah.
about like the minimum viable product and things like that. So that really helped. So it's very deliberate about what I did and how I spend my time, and really not doing a lot of things, which is why I try and write about in my Substack
Yeah.
because it seems fast, but it's a desire I've had for 20 or 30 years to be an illustrator. So it was just like sitting in there. And then when I decided,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to do it, and that I guess it all came out. And there
Right.
was an urgency because the moment I decided to do it, like a week later, my wife got pregnant. So it's like,
Wow.
I got to do this like quick, like
Yeah, you
in
had a very big
9 months
incentive to make
perhaps.
this successful.
Yeah, so that helped. Like desperation
Yeah.
helps. But yeah,
Oh.
I'm working on my 14th or 15th book now currently, illustrating.
15th?
Yeah, in
Wow. Oh
three
my gosh.
years. There's a
That's
few.
amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, look, I mean, if anyone is only just discovering Adam, if you go to adamming.com/books, I think it's slash books, right? It's
Yeah,
your library of book. It's incredible how your output. I mean, you've got a pretty good incentive. You have a kid. But congrats by the way. But it's
thank you.
yeah, it lights a fire under you, I guess, you know?
It's like it's being deliberate about so many things, like so many little tactical things, and
Yeah.
it can be done. I feel like I or artists in general tend to hold ourselves back. We think that things need to be a certain way. Like I need to use
Yeah.
this pen or this brush or I need this agent, then I can do it. So we're always giving
Yeah.
ourselves excuses not to move forward. But I think if you have a role model perhaps and follow their steps, you get there
Yeah.
quicker and try and improvise. So that's what I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
No, that's great advice.
to rewind what I was saying earlier is I wanted to be a cartoonist. So I did a strip on Instagram for a while. It was about being a stand-up comedian. It was
Really?
me as a stand-up comedian on Instagram. Yeah, I just posted that daily during COVID, nothing else, much else to do. And just to force myself to keep to a style, because before that I was thinking like I can do any style, so whatever the client wants I can do, but realizing that I just need a style. So I was doing that. And that kind of landed to my first gig. And it was in doing that, doing those panels, and maybe it was 10 or 12 panels sometimes.
Yeah.
And then I saw a picture book by John Klassen. I don't know if you've seen Who Stole My Hat.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've seen that one. Yeah, at the Society of Illustrators. Yes.
So Who Stole My Hat feels like a comic strip, like a 10-page comic strip. You just open it, it's a
It
two-page
is.
spread, but it's just like one drawing. And
Yeah,
then you
it's a
flip it, it's
sequential. Yeah.
almost, yeah, it's sequential with a little bit of text. And
Yeah.
then as I flipped through, and it felt like, hey, this is the same art form. I was looking for a package for sequential art, and newspapers are dying, but
Yeah.
this is growing. I noticed in the bookshop, the kids' book section goes from one shelf to two shelves, 10 shelves, two sections. So that was a place I felt that I could re-channel my energy
Yeah.
instead of drawing that daily strip to draw picture books. And yeah, that's what I
That's
did.
so interesting. There's a this might interest you. There's a correlation here with stand-up comedy and the comic that you were mentioning earlier, by Lut. Uh, and the sort of, journey from village to city and big, this sort
Right,
of
right.
hero's journey is, I have a friend who grew up, his dad had a durian farm in Malaysia,
Okay.
and he his dad, I think,
Does
wanted him
everyone know
to.
what a durian is?
Oh yeah, does everyone know what a durian is and how it smells? And it's a how do you explain it? I mean, it's a. I'm trying to think of anything close to it. What would the closest thing to a durian
You
be?
start with a watermelon,
Yeah,
you make the skin 3 times harder,
yeah,
add
yeah,
spikes,
yeah.
and the smell, which smells
Oh,
like things we shouldn't mention.
yeah. It's pretty. I mean, the smell's pretty bad, but it's a fruit. It's a fruit. Uh, and it's grown in Malaysia and so this friend of mine uh I think his dad wanted him to take over the farm and continue the
Okay,
family business, but he all he wanted to do was be a comedian, a stand-up comedian
right.
in America because for a while his dad went to I think Harvard, so they lived in no, he went up to Vermont, or I can't remember where it was. He went to the northeast of the US, and while his dad was in college for a little bit, and then his dad brought that business knowledge back to Malaysia, built up this business, and while my friend was in America, he just got obsessed with these stand-up comedians that he saw on TV, and he did not follow his dad's footsteps. He did leave Malaysia, and he grew up, and he moved to he went to Australia, studied law, and then dipped his toe into stand up. And a Malaysian comedian in Australia, there's not a lot of them. It's an
What's his
interesting.
name?
His name is Ronnie Cheng. He's
Okay,
so yeah, so he ended up kind of again focusing on one thing. So he quit law. He passed the bar, but he quit law, and he ended up just focusing on comedy. And it's that thing you were saying, like if you 80/20 it, if you just look at the one thing that's
yeah,
yielding the
that's it.
most ROI, you just go all in on that. And he did, and he still has. And now he's hosting The Daily Show, and he's doing tours around America, and he just sold out Radio City Music Hall. Like he literally went from a durian farm in Malaysia to to New York City. He lives down the street. It's crazy, just
Amazing.
that like hero's journey. And stand-up comedy was this thing he just like as a kid, he was just obsessed with, and he still is. Crazy.
I think
Do you
there's
know, have you
something
heard
about Malaysia
you've heard of Ronnie?
for sure, 100%.
Yeah, I always wonder who knows who he is. You
Like
never know.
he hosts like awards and things, right?
Yeah, he hosts all kinds of stuff. Yeah. I mean he's he's a
In
stand-up,
movies and
but
everything.
yeah, yeah, he does a lot of stuff. Um, so what I wanted to do in the second part of this is because you have this incredible talent. I just want to draw with you while we're talking, if that's okay. Do you have
Yeah,
the
sounds
ability
great.
to your camera to flip or to show
Yes,
your drawing surface and
yes, for sure.
yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I'm gonna flip mine. Um, this is this is my weird little desk setup that I have. Um, it's been a strange, again, like trying to adapt to live video and things like that with Substack after having just written and illustrated for the most part. But I'm really enjoying seeing other people draw because I don't get to do that anymore. I don't get to see that anymore. We're all in our little studios alone, and then I watch people like Beth Spencer and did you see the one I did with Claire recently where we were doing dip pens? Claire Powell. Uh, we were drawing
I
dogs.
did
That
see
was really
some of it,
fun.
yes.
Um, yeah, so I see you've got two tiny little. Are those black wings? What are they?
They are.
I've got the same. I'm obsessed with these things. I threw out two of them at the
Nice.
time. I got them down to about this long yesterday. And you have the dip pen. What
I
kind of nib
brought
is that?
it's made of glass. Have you tried
Oh, it's the
these?
glass nib. Yeah, I can't. I don't have one, but I've tried them. I feel like I can't quite get the same level of pressure sensitivity with it, but
You
I've
can't,
seen a
but they
lot of people
hold the
use
ink
them.
forever. That's the fun part.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
so
I've
I I'm using Higgins ink. What are you using there?
I've no idea. Let me see. It says fountain pen inks by Diamine. Is that
Oh
correct?
yeah, yeah. I use those for some of the refillable fountain
Yeah,
pens that I have. I'm using just Higgins waterproof ink. This is a Hunt 101 Imperial dip pen nib. This thing is really beaten
nice.
up. I actually cut the end off this because it was longer, but the weight of it, the center of weight of it was too, it wasn't quite what I wanted, so I just snipped off the end and then taped it up. So I've been holding mine back here to get more like flex because it's a flex nib. And it
Nice.
really dribbles, like it holds ink, but it doesn't quite like the glass, as it sounds like the glass one holds a lot of ink. This one you got to re-dip more often. Um, but what we do with these, what we do with Draw Me Anything, oh, hey, Jolene, is we ask for requests from the people watching. So in the comments, everybody, if you put in your requests, we'll pick one. And by the way, Virginia, I hope you can see us now. I know you were having some issues with the sound and video earlier. If you have any requests of something you would like us to draw, put it in the chat and we will attempt to draw it. Yeah, I'm thinking just to start with, oh, here we go. A dinosaur knitting a scarf from Amy. How do you feel about that, Adam?
Thanks, Amy. I feel like I don't know how to draw, but we can try.
every time, every time every time I sit down to draw and I have an image in my head, I still can't get it to come out the way that I want it to. I still feel like such a dilettante when I sit down. Um, so for me, I mean, a dinosaur knitting a scarf. This is gonna need some
My
thinking.
drawing process feels a little bit more like sculpting than drawing. It's like I
Right,
have to
right, right.
wrestle with the material until something comes out.
Yeah, right. That's a good analogy, actually. Wrestling. The reason I like these nibs, this one in particular, is that you have to seed, or like, you have to seed as in CEDE, seed, the control and chaos to it. You have
Right.
to kind of let it do what it's gonna do, regardless of what you like, which is really hard for me because I have like this perfectionistic tendencies of how I want things to look. And then it comes out and yeah, because I am wrestling with it. And I think, oh well, I guess that's what the nib decided today, so that's what we're going with, you know? It's yeah, it's something I had to learn. I was looking at the work of Peter DeSev and Richard Thompson and Nick Galifianakis and some of these, illustrators who really know what they're doing, and Bill Watterson, obviously, and how they use ink and pencil, and they manage to arrive at these incredible compositions that you just stare at for hours to try and figure out how the hell they did that, you know?
I
Is
feel
there any
art is
ones?
so different these days compared to that. Like nobody has the time to get that level of mastery. Or if they did, they're probably not on social media or Substack.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I had this conversation recently with another cartoonist, because I think the level of opportunity dictates the level of skill within that industry. So, for instance, in the days
Interesting.
when there were lots of magazines around and there were magazine illustration gigs available, it was one of those things where people would get really good and hone their craft at things like gag cartoons and magazine illustration. People like Ed Sorel, people like God, Frank Modell and Chuck Saxon and Charles Adams, and cartoonists like Sam Gross and Mort Drucker, these New Yorker cartoonists and magazine illustrators who really, they knew what they were doing. They did go to art school. They honed their craft, but they sacrificed a lot of time and effort to get really, really good at what they did, to the level that they were so good that they, became, the go-to guys, and then other people would
Yep.
replicate their style or try and try and emulate them. Whereas now there aren't that many opportunities for cartoonists, especially gag cartoonists and magazine illustrators, that, I mean, why would anyone invest the time and energy in getting extraordinarily good at that one skill, um, if there's nowhere to use it? And my argument is, which is maybe a bit, you know, more optimistic, but still realistic, is yes, that's true. Why would you bother getting good at a thing if there's nowhere to employ the thing?
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me at least, I never got good at this as the means to an end. And by that I mean I just did it to enjoy doing it. It's the same reason I do comedy. I never wanted a sitcom or a late night spot or a thing. And maybe that's bad. Maybe I should have wanted all those things, and maybe I'd be better at it if I did. But I always just did it for the joy of doing it, like not as a means to an end. Does that make sense?
Yes,
I think ultimately
I
that's,
think
a good reason to do it, maybe.
I think that's a great reason to do it. I don't know if I do it for that reason, if I'm honest. I think
Hmm.
there's that love and passion to do the thing, but also there's a commercial sense. Like when I think about style, you talk about style in a book.
Sure.
There are many ways to do it, and not, but there's only so much that people are willing to pay per page, for example.
Sure.
And so you have to take that into consideration. Like the style needs to be appropriate to the time you get to spend doing
Right.
it to get a good result. So
Yeah.
I factor all those things into the
Yeah.
process. Whereas
Yeah,
if I
for
didn't need
sure.
to think about that, I probably draw it a different way, maybe in traditional media throughout, for example.
Huh. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I always I ask every artist, when we're talking shop, like what's the dream gig, like what's, if you just had one
Hmm.
job, you woke up in the morning and the thing that made you want to just jump out of bed and get started with work, or the thing that made you so animated that you don't even want to go to bed, um what would it be? And I mean, for me, uh, I guess something akin to now, I mean, what Barry Blitt is doing, and book illustrators and people who are able to do work that is, sort of exciting and interesting, and makes a comment. I think, people like when Richard Thompson was doing political stuff, Barry Blitt and Talnase. I really enjoy watching their stuff. Steve Brodner is another one. I often think about that. Like, what's the dream? What's the goal? What's the, moonshot? Um, I think that would be pretty nice. Like being regularly published, like getting New Yorker covers, like Barry
Mm.
does, would be really nice. That'd be really nice. I think he's done over 100, well over 100. So
Are
God,
you asking me the question?
yeah.
Like
Like, what would yours
what the
be?
dream?
Yeah,
You know, every day I already wake up feeling that way. I do get so excited about doing my work, whether it's book work, but also for my Substack. I
yeah,
feel
yeah,
like because I was in that place, like turning 40 and then thinking like if I
yeah.
don't do this, I might not get a chance to be an artist.
Right.
So
Yeah,
that and knowing that other people have this feeling, and if I can help some of them like change that course of life, which
yeah.
I try to do, then that makes me happy.
I think you're being modest because I think you know that you already have. I mean, there are people you've helped who have ended up getting agents and book deals and gotten published, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's what my Substack tries to do.
yeah, I think, I mean, it does. You're killing it. That's amazing to be able to have that, to wake up in the morning and just be so happy to do that is fantastic. I love that.
When I look
Um,
at you, it feels like you're doing that as well. Like just look at the photo in your about page of your Substack. It looks like a movie still.
that's hilarious.
It's
That's
like you're
such a
living the
mess.
dream life. I wanted to ask what's wrong with Australia?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, there isn't a lot of opportunity for artists in Australia. Not to say that America's much better at the moment, but at least it is a lot better. The reason I did move here is there is a lot more opportunity for artists, especially cartoonists in the United States. At the time, this was 11 years ago,
Right.
mind you, but I was, a syndicated newspaper cartoonist, and I was able to do gag cartoons, and I was working for Mad Magazine, and I was doing all kinds of illustration work, live caricatures and events. Australia, I love Australia, and I'm going back for Christmas this year. But unfortunately, I worked there and kind of hit a bit of a ceiling on opportunity where I was just like, I can't, I can't pay rent. Like I've got to expand this
Yeah.
out. And I did want to live in New York. I always did want to live in New York, and I wanted to get more newspapers for the comic strip, and my comic strip was syndicated through Andrews McMeel Publications, well, syndication at the time, and they were based in Kansas City, and they had a New York office, and yeah, and so those 3 a.m. as you know, dealing with Americans, it's like the 3 a.m. at the time Skype calls with an editor or whatever is not exactly sustainable.
Right.
So
Makes
I
sense.
moved here, and so there's nothing wrong with Australia necessarily. It's just that it's not particularly not a particularly great place for artists. It doesn't, like, it's the first thing to go in the budget. Like as soon as there's any budget cuts, it's the arts.
Yeah.
It's performing arts, it's music, it's visual arts, it's training programs, it's endowments and endowments, yeah, and what do you call them? Scholarships and residencies. It's just the first thing to just drop. It's never anything else. It's always just, and it's disappointing because Australia has some of the best artists in the world, like best musicians, best painters, best cartoonists. I still think Australia, and I'm not talking about myself here, I still think Australia has the best political cartoonists in the world. I don't know if you've seen the work of David Rowe, um,
I haven't.
or David Pope, or Kathy Wilcox. I mean, I know Megan Herbert's doing some great stuff lately for The Guardian. There's a lot of great cartoonists. Unfortunately, the opportunities have really dried up. But yeah, I mean, it's cartoonists seem to be a dying breed in a lot of places. It's not something that is still the viable job that that it once was. By the way, I've decided to I'm watching yours, by the way, and I'm ridiculously jealous of this fluidity of line you've got going. I've decided to have the baby T-Rex eating
I
the
see it.
scarf as as the mother is knitting it. I don't know. I always When I draw a dinosaur, for some reason I don't assume it's immediately male. I always assume like it's because the female is always the bigger of the two of the dinosaurs, so it's always the bigger, more aggressive and imposing one. So, maybe I'm just learning that from the paleontology lessons I got from Jurassic Park too. Uh, but
I don't know
I've been
anything about but dinosaurs. Well, not much anyway. Other than that, they are birds, which is why I'm drawing feathers on them.
Oh yeah, well, the bird theory that they evolved from, yeah, the avian evolution theory. I want to show you something that this is. I don't know if you can see uh on your screen, but
I see it, yeah.
my this is my watercolor brush that I've been using lately. It's an old Yankees click pencil that I loved this brush so much, and I took care of it, but
I
the
love it.
body of it snapped off, and so I took the head of it and I put it on a on a pencil,
That's amazing.
a- and I glued it in, and now it's so perfectly weighted that I can't use anything else. Like I've got plenty of other watercolor brushes, but this one just has like the perfect weighting, which is so silly. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna add a tiny little bit of wash to this one just for
That
some
looks like
shadow.
something out of a video game, like a special weapon or something.
Yeah, like a mod. Yeah. Do you ever play any video games? I feel like if I had a PlayStation, I'd never get anything done.
Oh, do you know what? That's one of the things I should mention. When I decided to be an illustrator,
Yeah.
my sacrifice was my PlayStation. I
Really?
needed
That's so
I needed
interesting.
to find the time. So one of the things I did was count how many hours I spent playing FIFA, about 500 a
Wow.
year.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that had to go.
Okay.
And other things like meals, like I catered food and just did everything I could to find the time to get good
Yeah.
enough.
That's so good though. I mean, when people say I just don't have the time, it's like, yes, it's really hard to find time, especially when you have kids and you have other obligations and you have a job and you have all these things. But like, if you really did an audit of where your time goes and your attention goes, you
Yeah.
probably could eke out an hour or two somewhere.
15 a
Even,
week, I bet. I bet
yeah.
everyone here has 15 hours a week at least.
Did you want to talk about, so you have this, not just one Substack, but want to talk about 10-minute artist. I want to talk about that. Like, how did that come about and what is it?
It came about because when I first got my agent, a lot of people started asking like, how did that go? How did you do it? And things like that. And so I thought I just answer everybody at the same time
Right.
and put it on Substack. So I started answering those kinds of questions.
Yeah.
And then it became like just my journey. But
Huh.
as it evolved, it felt like the community kind of took over. And so
That's
I'm
so
leaning
interesting.
more towards what I can provide or what people need. And so that's been
Yeah.
the shift recently. And I also didn't
Huh.
want it to make it about me all the time. And I didn't want to make it about like breaking in because like I'm already in. So like
Yeah.
breaking in's not a thing anymore.
Right.
So yeah, that's how it evolved.
That's so
And
interesting. Yeah.
I feel like the first thing you need to do is put aside the time. And like the smallest
Yeah.
increment of that is probably 10 minutes. And so that's a
Right.
place to
Right.
start. So the 10-minute artist thing is about like if you wanted to start and everyone says they want to start, then start with 10 minutes and then you can scale that. Like get really good at spending 10 minutes practicing and then we can scale that up. Like you can go longer or you can do multiple 10-minute slots. And yeah, then we can talk about what to do next. But if you're not even doing it, like you're doing it every other day or even doing it on weekends, I don't know. I feel like how you spend a day is how you spend your life. So if you're not doing
That's
it
very
daily,
true.
it's not gonna happen. It's like
Yeah.
you can stack your days, and then that's what your life looks like.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's such a true statement. Yeah. How you spend your days is how you spend it. I mean, yeah. It sounds simple, but if you really dig into that, way you spend the majority of your attention is, yeah,
Yeah.
that's your life. I
And
mean,
it's also
I think I want to say it was James Clear. He said, the more control you have over your attention, the more control you have over your future. And it starts with having enough courage to protect your time. It's so easy to say yes. We want to be agreeable, helpful, liked. And that's how time disappears and attention becomes fragmented, not in big chunks, but in 1,000 small concessions. What you trade your attention for is what your life becomes. I think about that all the
are you
time.
just quoting James Clear like a Bible verse? Did you just do that?
I've thought about that, said that so many times. I had it stuck above
Right.
my desk for a year more because I kept having it's so easy to forget. It's so easy to forget how
Yeah.
you saying I think he would say something like no is a decision, yes is a responsibility. Like if you say yes to something,
Right.
you're you're giving your time and attention to something where no is it's a definitive decision. Even if it's like a soft no, you're still you're saying no to something so you can say yes to
Yeah.
something else. And
Exactly. And you can only have so many yeses. And people don't
yeah,
realize that. You you say yes to everything and then that just puts you in a spot that you can't get out of.
yeah,
And
it's
that's the
harder
hard
to
part.
say no after yes than it is to just say no in the first place.
Yeah.
There
But if you
there is
have an
a
opportunity to,
yeah, right.
sorry.
No, no,
If you have an
that's absolutely true.
opportunity
Yeah.
to say no after the fact, then still do it, I think.
Yeah, 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 for sure. If someone says, "Are you sure?" Then yeah, it's true. Um, there is something, if anyone's watching, every November I do this thing called November, like no dash Vember, which is you have to I basically teach people how to say no for 30 days. You have to say no to one thing every day for 30 days in November. And it's because it's you teach best that which you need to learn most. So I really, my people pleasing tendencies, I was just saying yes to so much stuff and then realizing, why am I working at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night? I guess I have too many deadlines. It's because I took on too much stuff and said yes to too many things. Uh, so yeah, I have it's on Substack. It's just no-vember.net or just no-vember challenge yeah, novemberchallenge.substack.com. And
And so how does
every
it work? Is
day,
it like a prompt?
yeah, well, it's a prompt and also lessons. So it's like
Right, nice.
people like James Clear and Oliver Berkman and these people who are much better than me at articulating the why of of the finitude of your time and attention and existence. Really, if people exist, they live
Right.
as if they're gonna have all this time, and then you go to a, this sounds morbid, but like you go to a funeral or something and realize you could it could be the end at any time, really, and then you think, well, what am I doing? All these quotidian these little worries I have and problems that I'm so caught up in, like, why not just do the thing now? Why not just put my attention towards the things that I want to do instead of regretting waiting until the exact right time, I don't know, maybe we're getting a little too deep here, Adam.
No, I love it. These are the kinds of things that I'm just trying to figure out where to put the feathers.
Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah. I
No,
can't
these are
believe I'm
definitely the
watching
kind
you
of
work and it's
things.
scaring the hell out of me just watching this thing come out of your brain. It's
It's not
incredible.
coming out of my brain. I don't know. I have a
We had a
quote,
question
and
just
that's from
quickly. Just
sure.
before that, I just want to quickly ask you because I do want to know about that quote. We had a question from
You sure?
Patricia. She said, "Adam, can you please name the dip pen you have again? That glass dip pen. What is it called?"
I cannot, but you can search glass dip pen and you'll find like all manners of this. I had a nicer one, but it broke, and
Oh,
so
okay.
this is not as nice as the one that I had. But
Right.
sorry.
Okay.
But it's nice, isn't it?
It is nice. It's beautiful. They're so elegant. Like they're nice. Sorry, you were gonna share a quote that you enjoyed.
Well, similar to this idea of saying no, but there's a emotional weight to it. I think it's Murakami. Well, I know it's Murakami, the
Sure.
author, who said that in order to be an individual, you have to be able to bear emotional pain. That's
Wow.
my translation of it, but yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And
That's
and I think that's important. Like a lot of people, they want to like live in an individualistic way, and you have to as an artist.
sure.
But you don't. But you care too much about what someone says of you or what you think you should be doing, and that holds you
Right.
back. And in order to overcome that, you have to just bear that emotional pain, and that's
Wow.
just the trade,
That's
the
so
price.
important. Yeah. I
Have
love.
you bore such pain?
Oh, yes. Yes. Yes,
Would
I
you
have.
share?
Yeah, but well, I mean, because I would be so chameleonic in my work early on, I would just do whatever like I'd take an assignment or I would do a job and then the client would say, "Oh, I need it to look like this," or "I like this style," or "Can you do it like this?" And then for the longest time, I would just adapt my style to whatever they wanted. And
Right,
so I never had my own style. I would just always be,
right,
and no one could ever place me, like they'd never see my work and go, "Oh, that looks like a Chatfield." And because I was just being a chameleon, I was just being this sort of artistically being a people pleaser and not actually sticking to my guns on what I wanted to draw or how I wanted to draw. So I would just say yes to everything and then just I'd mimic other styles or I would, draw in a style that they requested. And eventually I started turning down work because I was like, this just isn't me. Yes, I can do this, but I won't do this. And it's hard because you
Yep.
want the money, you want to please people, you want to be able to help people, and you want to be able to just sort of be the nice guy. But I started to get really good at just saying, you know what? No, that's not up my alley. I'm not doing that. And
Nice.
and you know what? People actually respect it. I thought they would hate me for it, and I was ready to bear a bit of pain. And to be fair, sometimes it was pretty bad. But for the most part, people are just respectful. They go, "Oh, okay, well, that's fine. We'll find someone else." And I love Murakami. He's such a great example of someone who has such a distinct voice and such a commitment to his craft because
Yep.
I think in 1Q84 and in what I talk about when I talk about running, there was a book tour, I guess, like the New Yorker Festival had him in New York at the
Mm-hmm.
I want to say town hall or something, and it was one of these talks where the author was there to really discuss the book, but also their process. And he had a translator because he was speaking in Japanese. And the interviewer asked him, everyone's wanting to know, like, what is the secret to your process? Like, how do you write so many books? How are you so prolific? How are you churning out so much material? And how is it so good?" And he sat for a moment and he didn't say anything. And then he thought for a second. And then he said some words in Japanese. And then the translator nodded and then looked up at the audience and said into the microphone, "I wake up early, I go to my desk, and I write." And then we were just
Yes.
waiting for something else. Everyone was just waiting, and they were like, "Oh wait, that's it, that's it." And then he goes, "Oh, and then I go for a run." It's like it was just like the greatest. It
Yeah.
sounds like he's taking the piss because he kind of is, but he's not. He's just like, he
Yeah.
just dedicates his time to doing that thing, and he does it every day, and he does it his way. I mean, I think his wife edits or reads chapters of his, and it's just his way of doing things is his way of doing things, regardless of what anyone thinks he should be doing. There's no real secret. It's just do the thing is the secret.
Yeah. Get used to, well, again, it's a kind of pain, like get used to the boredom of it.
Right.
But
Yeah, the
I read
boredom
this
of it.
thing or I heard a podcast about Mira, what's her name? Shapova. Mia
Sure.
Shapova, I think. Yeah.
Maria,
And she was
Maria,
saying that
yeah.
what Maria Shapova, and she was saying the thing that makes her great was the fact that she doesn't get bored. She can hit that tennis ball against the wall
Yes.
for 12 hours straight. And I
Sharapova.
think
Yeah.
that is talent.
Yeah.
Like people think talent is some magical thing. It's just this ability to not get bored and just do
That
the thing regardless.
wow. Yeah.
And
That's so
Seinfeld
true.
says it something somewhat differently. I'm trying to see if I can remember what he says. I can't remember exactly, but it's like no, actually, it eludes me completely. I'm sorry.
But he does have a similar outlook. Is like, if you can do the thing without losing the passion for it or the drive, like, I think he talks about getting in a flow state as well sometimes, like you know uh with comedy, but also with writing. Like, he just shows up every day, he has his big clear barrel pen and his yellow legal pad, and for 2 hours every day he sits and he writes, and he knows that's what he's going to do. And here, I remember when he was younger, he would talk about the fact that he didn't have that discipline. He would like
I
do
didn't
his
know
10
that.
minutes. Yeah, I mean, he would do his 10 minutes at the comic strip, and then, which is a comedy club in the Upper East Side, and then he would just be like, "Oh, I'm just going to do this every night. I've already got my 10 minutes. I don't need to, apply myself that much." And then one day he was on like Madison and 30 something. He said he sat there and he saw these road workers, like these construction workers, and they were on their lunch break, and they had their lunch pails, and they're sitting there eating, and they didn't necessarily look like they were enjoying their job. They were
Mm.
sweating, and they were dirty, and they had to work on this big building site, and then the whistle blew, and they had to get back to work, and so they packed up their lunch pails and their food, and then they got up and they went back to work. And he thought, if they can exhibit that level of discipline to just get up and just do the job, even if it's just for money, but also is like, who am I? I'm doing my dream job. Who am I to just be sitting here and not working, not doing work? Like, if I want to get good, I have to have that discipline to show up and do the work. And then from then on, I mean, everything changed. He was on the Tonight Show. He got, eventually he got a sitcom. He was touring. He was doing theaters. But yeah, it was those construction workers that he saw that changed his brain on the ethic.
Amazing. I think
Um,
that so much of this process, like if you ask me what was my manual for what I've done, it
yeah,
is stand-up comedy. Like it started
yeah,
with Born Standing Up, the book, have you read
yes.
by
Steve
Steve
Martin, my
Martin?
favorite
Yeah,
autobiography. Steve Martin, Born Standing Up. Highly recommend it. Yes.
yeah, that's a great book. And then Comedians in Cars,
Yeah.
Getting Coffee, that is such a,
Yeah.
it's like people have accomplished everything talking about that journey, and all of them more or less say the same thing. Either it was so
Yeah.
much hard work, or I should have worked harder.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. If there's a correlation across all those conversations, the Steve Martin episode of Comedians in Cars was such a good one because he mentioned that if he did today what he was doing back then when he was like selling out giant theaters and arenas and things, it wouldn't work because the context is
Right.
totally different. But Steve Martin is a great example of someone who just had that capacity to just not quit. He had that gig. There's a chapter in that book where he talks about well, there's two key chapters I think in that book. One where after the applause, the audience didn't leave, and so he led them out into an empty swimming
Yeah.
pool in the college,
Right.
and he kept performing for them. And then the other one was that he did this gig, and I've done this before, which is horrible. He did this gig when no one showed up, and he's
Yep.
on stage ready to go, and he's like, well, I guess I'm not doing this. And then the owner of the venue was like, oh, no, no, the windows are open, just start, just do the act, just start performing, and
Right.
then people will look in the window and see that something is happening, and they'll
Yeah.
come in and sit down. He's like, so you want me to perform for nobody right now?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, yeah, just start. And he's like, he was doing a magic act. It was hilarious, and he did it and it worked.
But that's what it takes. Like people think that you need like thousands of people following you before you do your thing. You start doing it for nobody, and you do it again and again and again. And like
Yeah.
when you start a Substack, you potted your MailChimp list. I had
Yes.
nothing, and you just
Yeah, you
do
started from
it
zero.
again and again and again, and two people come, three people come, and that's how you grow it. And I like that. I really like that idea.
Yeah.
So I think everything I do has that stand-up comedy work rate ethos, which I
Yeah.
learned
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
books like those.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good, you know what? That's such a good reference, that book. If anyone hasn't read Born Standing Up, even if you don't necessarily like Steve Martin, it's probably one of the
Or
best
comedian.
comedy autobiographies I've ever read. I mean, it's the best, I think. I honestly think you learn so much from him starting out as a magician at like Disneyland and like, oh, I don't know, Magic Castle, I think it was. Just all these, just persistence, and he's still around. He's still working. Only Murders in the Building is a huge hit. Um, Adam, I'm
I
realizing
want
we're
to show you
hitting the one
something.
hour mark. So I want to zoom out and show this is this is my dinosaur knitting a scarf, and yours is incredible. Yours is this oh, I can't even. This is ridiculous. You've drawn this amazing with feathers, which is great. It's just wow. That's
You're too
incredible.
kind, man.
No, no, seriously, this is
It doesn't even look like a dinosaur.
it does. It does look like it. Get out of here. It does. It's like someone said dragons are my current origami. I don't know what that means, but I like that. Anyway, thank you. I'm gonna flip the camera around just before we finish up.
Okay.
This was incredible. I want to do this again with you because I feel like we could talk so much more shop about art and comedy and creativity. But I did want to, just before we go, I wanted to check if there's anything that you want to plug, or anything you're working on that you're excited about that you want to share.
Sure. Tomorrow I'm doing this, what do you call it? I call it creative breakthrough. So what I'm gonna do is show people how I think you can do a Substack. If I was starting out a Substack tomorrow from scratch,
Yeah.
what I would do. And I think there's like 4 steps or 4 ideas that I want to get across. So that's for paid subscribers. I'm doing that tomorrow, and I think it's
Great.
super valuable. Like if you're thinking of it as a side gig or earn some money on the side, I think that's yeah, I think it can be helpful. And I think
That's great. Yeah.
doing what we do, it's nice to have an outlet to earn some money doing something that you love and not necessarily depending on other people to choose you for a job. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That's the dream. Yeah. Well, Adam, it was an absolute pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for doing this today. And you are a great teacher.
thanks for
Everyone in
having
the
me,
comments
man.
is talking about what a great teacher you are at this, because that's something I've noticed about you, is that you're able to articulate really, really helpful and interesting things in a way that isn't too esoteric, too, dense and vague. Like, you really, really know how to talk to people about this. So, anyone who hasn't subscribed yet, please subscribe to Adam Ming's Substack. You can just tap his name in the top corner. And Adam, thank you again. This was really great, and I
I
appreciate you staying
appreciate
up
it,
so
man.
late. I know it's midnight in Malaysia now, so.
Yeah.
All
Thanks for
right.
having me.
Thank you so much. See ya. Thanks, everyone.